Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your recap for Monday, April 29th. So first things first, we have a huge week of earnings. It took me usually I can go over the earnings list pretty quickly, but I think I started right around 3 o'clock today. I look at names obviously before that, but I like to post as many names as possible. And there's just a ton of names that are coming out, not only today and tomorrow morning, but through the week. A lot of software names. So software, like we've been seeing, they're going to have to put up good numbers. They're going to have to continue to put up good numbers. And that's when I said like we've been seeing, they've been pretty consistent. A lot of names have been putting up really good earnings, so they're going to have to continue to do that. A lot of names are moving up. We saw a lot of option activity today in some smaller cap names. So, people want to get into some of these names specifically, like we talked about in Friday's video. After a couple names have reported now, Microsoft and Amazon talking about how strong the cloud is and how big their software business is. That's really kind of gotten people into into some of the software names and that are breaking out all over the place, and some ones that have been a little bit unloved or have been beaten up a little bit the last couple of weeks. We started to see, call activity in some of those names like STNE, which was took a big leg up and then kind of fell apart a little bit. And now, once these names start to move a little bit, then all of a sudden, like, guys are just buying momentum, right? I mean, they're just buying calls. Again, these are not, in my opinion, the order flow where somebody knows something. People are just, have a computer model. They see something move fast, and they just go ahead and buy calls. That's kind of what you're seeing there. So let's talk a little bit about Google. Really overbought. I did not play Google for earnings. You could see it's been taking out. I took out 2 virgin point of controls. These are all down here because it's been moving up so fast, and it's been leaving some dead bodies along the way in terms of just blasting through different areas. You got another one. You got a virgin point of control on the hourly that is down to 1207. I think Google. I think it goes down maybe a little bit further here. I'm not playing it or anything like that, but a name this thing has run up really, ran into the earnings print, made a 52-week high today. And that's probably going to be a false breakout for Google. But yeah, I mean, their numbers, their revenues missed by a decent amount, 29.48, still strong, but just not as good as what everybody was expecting. So that's the situation there. And it will probably take a couple days, I would think. The general rule, by the way, is T+3. If you miss expectations or you have a bad quarter, it usually takes 3 days for it to kind of fizz out a little bit. I know everybody's always gets impatient, and they retail traders especially. No offense to anybody, but they see something down, they want to buy right away. Relax, let it sit, let it do its thing, and usually the rule is you wait 3 days. As most institutional traders will do that. Again, video, not giving out any advice or anything like that. No recommendations, so always have to say that. But that's my feeling on Google. I think it just ran too much into the print. Where's that VPOC, by the way, on the daily? Maybe it checks back to that. So we're down at 1219. This is where I was playing. I was playing Google. We had a nice swing trade on to basically target this virgin point of control. And once that got taken out, I got out of the trade. It was a move up to here, and then of course since I got out of it, it's just continued to go further. Some other names that reported, I think Yum China, just their numbers just hit the tape. They had good numbers. So I played a couple names today. I did not play these two. I played. Here's my notes that I sent out to private Twitter. Implying 3.4% move. As you can see, and again, I really rely a lot on the history That is a pretty good sign usually when there's some back and forth action. You could see in this right column here, it's plus minus plus minus 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 plus. That's not really consistent. That actually helps me really narrow things down to whether or not I want to take a trade if they have really good history. Um, but yeah, I think, as I said here, I said I think it has run too much, and we put that out a few hours ago. I wanted to make sure I got that one. Just a thought. Since we've got. Here's my thought on VXXB. I think this is probably the most horrible product ever created. I'll give you my quick 30 seconds on VXXB with the VIX. Right around 13 right now. It's a horrible, horrible product. It draws retail traders in. I don't know why that they think that they have to trade this VXXB. It is meant to try to track the VIX. It does a ridiculously bad job. So again, just be aware. Just because something says short term tries to track short term volatility, the VIX. This VXXB is the worst product I think has ever been created because it just doesn't track the VIX, right? And I've gotten into arguments with people on Twitter. They're like, well, what else can I trade? Trade SPY puts. That's your measure of volatility. Anyway, that said, after I badmouth that product, if you want a short-term trade in this thing, I do think volatility increases going into the Fed meeting on Wednesday, as well as some of I put this out a couple hours ago before the close, so I don't know if anybody took that trade, but that might be working a little bit now with the with Google out. The only two I traded, and again, I trade earnings very small, but we did CHGG, which has a good record of earnings, but it looks like maybe they were up a little bit too much. And then we did TNet. This was a name that we did last time. TriNet. They provide healthcare services to like people at WeWork. And this name is not going to print after hours, but I think it's up pretty nicely. Where is this thing? The bid right now is 65 and change. Ask is 68, so that should be good for our 65 calls if it stays there tomorrow morning. A few other names that reported that I didn't play any of these names, but PI up to 26, so nice move there. We talked a little bit about this name. This is another name that has had good history, good recent history for earnings. SANM, Semnina, I believe it's pronounced. NXPI I don't think is out yet for whatever reason. I believe they are out after the close today, but it's already 4:45, and I do not see them out. A few other names. Again, there's going to be a ton. MGM is down a little bit. This is not a great name to play on earnings, in my opinion. There's a few other ones that I see. Western Digital moving down, I believe, after hours. That was another name. I did not want to play that name either. Not a good name for earnings. Okay, so we'll move on. So what happened today in the market? Flat and a little bit of a fade there after what, about 2:30. So again, I thought we would, honestly, I thought we would get this last week, a little bit more choppiness, but we had some names really come in with good earnings like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon. But I think if we kind of get mixed results, we're going to see a choppy market, and possibly, besides the Fed meeting on Wednesday, we also have, I think, ISM numbers that are out on the 1st. We also have a jobs report. So this week is just chock full of names and information that we're getting out this week. I think it's a better week to trade a little bit lighter. I put out some really nice names in the weekend newsletter, but I just, I don't have the appetite right now to trade them all. I like the price action today in IWM, which outperformed. We talked about that in the weekend newsletter. One of the names that I was concentrating on for the last couple of weeks was Burke B. Had a big day today, and I was able to take some really nice profits in this. And this closed right around the highs. I see a lot of people talking about the financials. I've been long the financial. I mean, we got long Berkshire B last week, but I've got into XLF. What, about 2 weeks ago, I think, when it would, or maybe a week and a half ago, somewhere around there. So I see a lot of people talking about BAC today and Citigroup. And was great. Members started to kind of catch that last week on Friday to say, hey, are you going to go into BAC or into to Citigroup? Because a couple of these charts really looked pretty good. And I said, no, I'm in XLF. And, that I was able to take a target in XLF. So again, I really enjoy being ahead of, most people on Twitter talking about the move in financials today. We've been all over that. KRE, I think, was the best performing group. And that's kind of that's my MO. And if you're a member of the group or if you're thinking about joining, I'm usually ahead. I'm sorry, I'm giving myself a little bit of a pat on the back, but I find these moves or I find these setups a few days. I know I don't have the same number of Twitter followers that some other people on Facebook, on Twitter have, but I come out with this stuff, usually a couple days before everybody else does. Sorry. Palo Alto, I think, is another really good setup here. And not everybody. There's a lot of really good traders on Twitter, but I see again, perfect example. I see a lot of people talking about BAC today. We've been talking about that for the last 2 weeks. And yeah, I think that I don't see anybody talking about Berkshire B, but I'm sure they will. This was a real nice setup. I provided, even though I got into the trade last week, provided some details about what I was looking for here on the weekly chart. So nice move there, some nice profit taking, and at this point now I can kind of just sit with the profits, and it is a longer dated trade, but they do have earnings coming up, so we'll see how that goes. What else for today? I like some of the China names as well. I think Baba looks good. JD doesn't look bad. BZUN had a real nice day today. Very simple. And I know some people just shy away from this because it's an ETF and they don't think it's going to move that much. But if you don't want that single stock exposure, because specifically Baba is going to be reporting earnings soon. So if you don't want that exposure, this is the weekly chart. There's also there's a lot of overhead supply in Baba. I think it could definitely get to 191 and a half, which is a nice gain. That's about $4 up. But I think you're going to be hitting resistance there. So I think a better play is the whole ETF, the Chinese internet. Again, it moves fast enough, and the option prices are cheaper than going into Baba itself. And also, I like a couple charts like the 10-cent chart, which is the biggest weight in there. But Baba, JD, these are the names that are in this ETF. Let's see where BZUN closed. It did finish up 5%, so real strong move out of that one. I mentioned STNE, saw some call activity, which I think was just pure momentum playing. I think this could possibly get back up to the point of, not the point of control, but the bottom of value, which is right around 30 before it hits resistance. What else? I forced a target in ZS. This name whips around quite a bit, so I'm up nicely since I added the trade. So just took a little bit of profits in there. What else? TW is acted pretty well. There's a whole bunch of analysts. Again, newer name that I got into, I think at the beginning of last week. Closed right around the highs today, so pretty nice. And the analysts weren't too kind. Now that it's out of the quiet period and a whole bunch of analysts started rating it, a lot of neutrals on it. That's why it was down pre-market, but ended pretty nice. A few other names that we saw some option activity. Couple interesting ones I'll leave you with. OLED got a big downgrade today, and by Susquehanna, but this name had great, if you remember, it had great earnings back here. So look how it's into support, top of value. So if it holds here, look at what somebody did today in calls. They bought a big chunk, and this was not against shares, this was outright. May 3rd, 162.5 calls. Somebody spent 760 for those. That's a pretty decent sized bet. It does look like an earnings trade, but of course they could also be thinking that a lot of times when you go into earnings, the implied volatility will start to go up. So maybe they'll get that added kicker before that they report, and the calls will become more valuable, and maybe they can sell out of that position before they actually report. But I like the support in that one. Like I said, we saw a lot of call buying. Yext, I actually, this was not on my list coming into today for on the weekend setup, but this was a name I remember we saw calls last week. And again, for me, it has to be something other than calls. hitting the tape. I like the chart setup here. Again, I think it was Thursday or Friday where we saw calls. Again, not a huge order, but I like how this is now inside value and above the 50-day moving average. So again, small trade that hit the tape. But again, sometimes it's the way that option activity works for me is idea generation. Yeah, did I say that right? Yeah. PayPal saw some calls today. I don't know why they're buying. I never know why they're buying them, but I was trying to put a theory behind that. I don't know. Square reports this week, but PayPal had a pretty nice day today. Then of course BAC, Upwork had calls, and then there was another one. It should be on my list. GSKY. So some of these names do a really small cap software names. Keep in mind, and I sent out the list earlier, so I'm not going to bring it up again. But just a huge amount of earnings coming out for the software group. Twilio reports this week. That's after the close tomorrow. Paycom, QLYS, and then there's like 5 other names too. AYX I think is this week as well. And then there's like 5 other names. I have the list up someplace, but so it's going to be really interesting for that group. But I think really nice progress out of the financials. What else did well? Yeah, the Chinese internets did okay today. What underperformed? Bonds were off. I am long a TLT trade. That was my biggest loser of the day. I didn't do anything with it yet today. I have to think about what I want to do on Fed Day for that. But what underperformed? Gold miners again. Biotech was negative on the day. Semis were also negative on the day. I think so. Healthcare underperformed. All right, so we'll leave it there. I mean, there's going to be a ton of stuff. We do a pre-market session every morning, so we'll be going over. There's a ton. I keep saying the same thing. Sorry, but there is a large amount of earnings out tomorrow morning, so we'll be going over all those names in the live session. Thanks for watching today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.